see in a burnt cigarette. However, we don't have long-term studies of their long-term safety, especially of the propylene glycol, which is the mist-forming. But every evidence is that they are dramatically less harmful than burning a cigarette. Maybe not harmless, but less harmful than a cigarette. And if that's the way you use them to get off cigarettes, and eventually I hope you get off all of nicotine and tobacco products, whether they're e-cigarettes or burnt tobacco, but stay off the burnt tobacco, that's the killer.
Catherine Hollander.
I think another issue there, which is something that Mitch Zeller has spoken a lot about, is how right now the e-cigarette market is sort of the wild, wild west when it comes to regulation. One of the things that we don't know sort of on a brand-by-brand basis is which products are in the cigarettes. So I know the FDA in 2009 studied a few brands and found an ingredient in antifreeze present in one of them. So right now there aren't the requirements for safety there because they're not yet regulated by the FDA.
Dr. Frieden, I know you want to get in on that.
Yes, I do want to say that if you want to quit smoking, there are 7 FDA-approved medicines with good evidence base that work. And there are lots of things that people can do that increase their likelihood of succeeding. There are medicines that will double or triple the likelihood that you'll succeed when you try. You can do certain things that are proven to work, like get even just 10 minutes of counseling 4 times through a quit line or a counselor, quit with a friend, figure out what the triggers are that result in your starting to smoke. Look at the last time you tried to quit as you tried before and what worked well and didn't work well from that. So I think we have to separate 2 different questions here. One is, what might the role of e-cigarettes be? And the second is, if someone smokes, what can they do to quit, which is the single most important thing they can do for their health. So congratulations on taking that really important step. Bottom line here is that most Americans who've ever smoked have already quit, and most smokers want to quit, and everyone can quit. Whether e-cigarettes will play a role for some people, we still aren't sure. We do know there are theoretical benefits and theoretical harms, but the bottom line is there's proven medications that work very effectively and proven ways to increase your odds of success.
All right, Dr. Frieden, I smoked for 10 years from the time I was 15 until I was 25. I was smoking 2 packs a day. I quit out of sheer vanity. My husband could not stand the smell of cigarettes and couldn't stand the smell in my hair, on my clothes, so it was vanity. But I managed to quit cold turkey. Now, I'm wondering whether it's more difficult to quit today because there are, or do you know that there are more addictive substances in those cigarettes today?
It does appear that the tobacco industry figured out ways to make cigarettes more addictive, and research that we've done in our laboratory here at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has documented an increase in what has been termed free nicotine or crack nicotine in not only cigarette smoke but also smokeless tobacco. So it does appear that cigarettes they're certainly very addictive, and they may even have become more addictive in recent years.
So I was very fortunate to get out when I did. Let's go to Farmersville, Ohio. Hi there, Kurt.
Good morning.
Hi.
I was curious as to what your expert studies shown regarding the comparative damages done from organic tobacco versus the manufactured tobacco.
Dr. Abrams.
Yes, I think that's one of the good examples of misleading advertising and marketing by the tobacco industry. We have done research that shows that the so-called organic natural tobacco products are just as harmful as regular tobacco, but the public thinks that because they're organic, they may be healthier or safer. So we have data to suggest that people who think they are buying those organic cigarettes, over 60% of them believe they're safer than regular cigarettes, and they are absolutely not.
Greg.
And that's another example of how the tobacco industry has used health claims of sorts to actually discourage some people who would otherwise quit to continue using cigarettes. They did that with light, low, and mild, terms that misled the public, and that a federal judge actually has found that the tobacco industry very deliberately misled the public to continue the addiction rather than people trying to quit.
Mitch.
You said something in the opening to the show about ventilation, and we need to make the point about cigarette design. The public doesn't fully understand that even though the companies can no longer use terms like light and low tar and mild, there are still cigarette design features out there, principally something known as ventilation holes, laser perforated tiny little holes that are very hard to see with the naked eye. And those holes were used to drive down so-called tar and nicotine deliveries for the sake of advertising years ago. The companies can no longer claim that these are light and low tar. But the reason why that judge ruled the way she did in that case, and why these companies are now all adjudicated racketeers, is because those holes were placed just so far from the lip end of the cigarette so that when the smoker put the cigarette in their fingers or put the cigarette in their mouth, they would cover the holes. And once those holes got covered, it drove up tar and nicotine delivery. And we have the opportunity as the regulators now to look at all aspects of design features to see what possible role regulation can play.
I just want to add to this idea of misleading the public. One of the biggest things we're worried about, especially with kids and young adults, is little cigars and cigarillos that are exempt from some of the taxes and some of the ways that cigarettes are marketed because they're classified as cigars, which is a real boondoggle because they're actually cigarettes wrapped in a little bit of cigar paper that meets the federal standard of calling them a cigar. But also kids are still very susceptible to flavored little cigars and cigarillos, and we've seen a huge uptake in them. They're also sold in single or 5-packs at a much cheaper rate than cigarettes. So it's a perfect starter product that we're very worried about, and it's another thing that I think FDA would like to more strictly regulate if the government would give it permission to do so.
Let's go to Louisville, Kentucky. Hi, Brent, you're on the air.
Thank you, Diane. My question is revolving around smokeless tobacco. I hear a lot of comments from your guest today about burn tobacco. I find that I'm addicted to smokeless tobacco probably as much as my dad was to cigarettes. And I'm in the process of quitting. I'm working on it through peer pressure from my kids and some of the educational programs. But I guess my question would be is, does the research on smokeless tobacco, does it support, are you seeing the smokeless tobacco companies putting additives in their product to make them more addictive, or is it simply just the nicotine addiction on its own? Particularly, I think smokeless tobacco has always been seen as a safe alternative, even though it's not, particularly because you see athletes using it. You see a lot of baseball players.
Isn't that associated with mouth and tongue cancer?
There are all manner of cancers associated with smokeless tobacco products, but to the question about addiction, over the years, information came out, this is going back some decades, that smokeless tobacco products were deliberately designed through something called a graduation strategy, so that young people would initiate with more candy-like, better tasting, lower nicotine delivering products as starter products. And then there was a graduation strategy as they became addicted to have them move up the ranks to higher nicotine, more highly addictive products. Yes, in the abstract, a non-combusting tobacco product is going to be less harmful than a combusting tobacco product. But any initiation of any tobacco product, combusting or non-combusting, by a kid is bad for society and bad for public health. And one of the real challenges with smokeless tobacco, and it's more on a regional basis than a national basis, is the degree to which these products can be very popular, especially with young boys.
Why is it regionally popular?
We think it's associated with culture, with family, with history. Smokeless tobacco seems to be more of a regional issue than a national issue.
Mitch Zeller, he's director of the Center for Tobacco Products at the FDA, and you're listening to the Diane Rehm Show. I want to go back to this question of packaging and labels. Do you believe that this new report will prompt the FDA to push anew for bigger and better warnings?
Well, we were not waiting for the report to come out to be working on that. The litigation that I referred to ended spring of last year, and the administration has been on the record ever since as saying, basically back to the drawing board for FDA. In light of the court decisions, what we have to do is commission new research to support a final rule on graphic health warnings that will survive the inevitable litigation that will come. And we are in the process of doing that research now. There's nothing more that I can say about it.
Wouldn't you think that this new Surgeon General's report would provide the data to go forward?
Well, we're hopeful that that the FDA will be able to move forward and satisfy the court requirements to be able to justify it. But not only is it a problem in the United States, but globally, as countries have been moving forward with trying to do large graphic warning labels and plain packaging, frankly, to get the brand salesmanship off of the pack. The tobacco industry has been using trade disputes to initiate litigation against countries to try to block warning labels that way.
And before